forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. The soft creak of the bedroom door echoed in the dim silence of the house. The clock on the wall blinked 2:17 a.m., its faint glow casting eerie shadows across the hardwood floor. Logan stood frozen, heart pounding louder than the ticking. His breath caught as he watched his wife, Emily, asleep on the bed, her face serene, untouched by the storm brewing inside him. The text message replayed in his mind over and over. "Tonight was unforgettable. I can still feel your touch." His grip tightened around the phone as the words burned into his memory. The sender's name, unknown. But Logan knew the truth. Outside, rain tapped gently against the window, a soft rhythm mocking the chaos within him. His suitcase, half-packed, sat in the corner, clothes spilling out carelessly. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. Not like this. A single thought rooted itself in his mind: she'll notice when she wakes up. She'll see the empty closet, the missing toothbrush, the quiet absence of my scent. But not tonight. He stepped back, one last glance at the life he was leaving behind. The ache in his chest deepened, but the pain of staying was worse. As the front door clicked shut behind him, the storm outside raged louder, matching the one tearing through his heart. Some secrets don't need confrontation. They reveal themselves in the silence left behind. Logan Pierce had always been a man of quiet strength. A devoted husband. A loyal friend. The kind of man who remembered every anniversary, every small detail that mattered. He knew how Emily liked her coffee, 2 sugars, no cream, and how she hated thunderstorms but loved the sound of rain. Thoughtful, reliable, steady. But steady didn't mean unshakable. And on that cold, rain-soaked night, everything he believed about his life began to collapse. From the outside, their marriage seemed perfect. Framed wedding photos lined the hallways, smiling faces captured under a golden sunset, promises whispered before family and friends. The kind of love story people envied. But those smiles didn't reflect the silence that had settled between them in the past year. They had met in college, drawn together like two halves of the same story. Logan was an architecture student, meticulous and detail-driven. Emily, a fine arts major, was wild and impulsive, a creative storm who painted sunsets brighter than they appeared. They balanced each other once. His calm anchored her, while her free spirit taught him to embrace spontaneity. It worked until it didn't. At first, the changes were subtle. Logan's job at the architecture firm consumed his days, and his nights. The late hours stretched longer as he chased promotions, convincing himself it was for them, for their future. Emily understood, at least that's what she said. But while Logan focused on blueprints and deadlines, Emily threw herself deeper into her art. Late gallery showings, wine tastings, a different crowd, one Logan wasn't part of. The connection they once shared shifted. Conversations became routine. Talks about dreams and plans faded, replaced by practicalities, groceries, bills, schedules. Nights together turned into nights apart. The distance grew, silent but heavy. Logan ignored the signs at first. Relationships hit rough patches, right? They had been through hard times before. He told himself the late-night texts she kept hidden were innocent. That the subtle way she angled her phone away wasn't intentional. That the way she pulled back when he reached for her hand was just stress, not detachment. But it gnawed at him. The missed calls. The vague excuses about working late when her gallery didn't have any new shows. The lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne clinging to her scarf one night. And then came the message. Logan had returned from a business trip, exhausted but eager to be home. The house was dark. Emily was already in bed, her breathing soft and steady. He was about to climb in beside her when her phone lit up on the nightstand. The words burned into his memory. Tonight was unforgettable. I can still feel your touch. There was no name attached. Just unknown. But Logan didn't need a name. He stood there for a long time, staring at the screen, feeling his pulse thunder in his ears. A part of him wanted to wake her up, demand the truth. But another part, the quieter, more painful part, already knew the answer. Emily had always craved attention. That had been part of her charm once, the way she could light up a room, draw people in. But now, it felt like a hunger she'd never satisfied. And Logan? His flaw was believing silence could solve problems. That if he worked harder, stayed patient, things would return to how they once were. But silence had a cost. That night, as he packed his suitcase, memories haunted him. Their first apartment, Small, cluttered, but filled with laughter. Nights spent talking about dreams, painting the walls together, making promises. The way she used to rest her head on his chest, tracing lazy circles on his arm as they watched movies. Now, those moments felt like they belonged to someone else's life. He wasn't leaving to punish her. He was leaving because staying hurt more. And as he zipped his suitcase shut, Logan realized something else. Emily wouldn't notice right away. Not the missing shirts from the closet. Not the absence of his cologne. She wouldn't notice until it was too late. Transition. Behind closed doors, their lives were anything but ordinary. Logan sat in his half-empty apartment, staring at the rain trickling down the window. The storm outside mirrored the chaos brewing inside him. His suitcase still lay in the corner, half unpacked, as if part of him wasn't sure he was really gone for good. The ache in his chest refused to fade. The message. Those 5 words haunted him. Tonight was unforgettable. I can still feel your touch. He could have confronted her, demanded answers, but something in him had stopped. Maybe it was fear. Fear of confirming the betrayal he already sensed. Or maybe it was the quiet hope that there was still a chance to fix things. But hope felt thinner with each passing day. Logan scrolled through old photos on his phone. Their honeymoon in Italy. Christmas mornings tangled under blankets. Moments that felt so far away now. He thought about calling her, about going back. But then he remembered the distance. The coldness. The way she had been slipping further, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to hold on to. And Emily? She wasn't oblivious. Not entirely. The night Logan left, she had noticed the empty side of the bed, the silence heavier than usual. She didn't cry. She didn't chase him. But there was an ache, a hollow, sinking guilt she couldn't quite explain. Because she knew. Deep down she knew. The message had been reckless. The affair even more so. What started as harmless flirtation with Marcus, the charming new investor for her gallery, had spiraled into something dangerous. Something she couldn't control anymore. Marcus wasn't just anyone. He was bold, confident, a man who knew exactly how to break down her walls. The attention he gave her was intoxicating, making her feel seen in ways Logan hadn't for months. But it wasn't just attention. It was power. Control. The affair had started with stolen glances during gallery events, lingering touches that lasted a second too long. Then came the late-night drinks, the private meetings under the pretense of sponsorship discussions. And then the hotel room. It should have ended there. But it didn't. Now Marcus wasn't content with whispers and secrecy. He wanted more. And Emily felt trapped. The messages had started getting bolder. I don't like being kept a secret, Emily. Don't make me remind you who's in control. A threat. And Emily knew exactly what it meant. Marcus had connections. He had power. He could ruin her career, her reputation. And worse, he knew about Logan. About their fragile marriage. If Marcus chose to, he could destroy everything. And yet, the thrill had been undeniable. The way Marcus looked at her made her feel alive, desired in a way she hadn't felt in years. But now the cost was becoming clear. The stakes were growing. Logan wasn't just slipping away, he was gone. And if he found out the truth, there would be no way back. And Marcus? He was dangerous in ways she hadn't anticipated. His charm masked something darker. Possessiveness. Emily stood in the dimly lit gallery that evening, alone. Rain battered the windows, the shadows of the paintings stretching long across the floor. She clutched her phone, reading his latest message. Meet me tonight. Or I'll come to you. Her stomach twisted. What had she done? Outside, headlights flashed as a car pulled up, Marcus's black luxury sedan. And miles away, in his silent apartment, Logan scrolled through his phone one last time before deleting the last photo of them together. Transition. What seemed thrilling in the moment was quickly spiraling out of control. Emily's pulse pounded as Marcus's black sedan idled outside the gallery. The engine's low rumble echoed in the empty street, a sound that felt more like a warning than an arrival. She hadn't replied to his last message, but here he was, uninvited, unapologetic. The glass door reflected his shadow as he stepped out, adjusting his tie with that same confident smirk she once found irresistible, but now felt oppressive. She checked the time. Nearly midnight. Too late for anyone to notice, yet the fear of being seen gnawed at her. She knew how easily secrets could slip through cracks when the world wasn't watching. Marcus entered, rain dampening his coat. his gaze locked onto hers, unwavering, as he closed the door behind him with a quiet click that seemed far louder than it should have been. "You ignored my message," he said, voice calm but sharp beneath the surface. Emily folded her arms, trying to mask the trembling in her hands. "Marcus, you can't just show up like this." "I told you." "You told me a lot of things," he interrupted, stepping closer. "That we were a mistake. That you loved your husband. But you're still here, and he's not." She flinched. His words hit harder than they should have. "This has to stop," she whispered, avoiding his eyes. Marcus tilted his head, studying her. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. With a swipe, he brought up a photo, a blurred shot of them from weeks ago, holding hands outside a bar. Too close. Too intimate. Her breath caught. "Do you think Logan has seen this yet?" Marcus murmured, angling the screen toward her. Panic spread like wildfire. "You wouldn't? Wouldn't I?" His smile was cold. "You forget, Emily. I invested in you. Your gallery. Your career. If I decide to pull out, everything crumbles." She swallowed hard, throat tightening. The walls felt like they were closing in. Suddenly the doorbell chimed. Both of them froze. Emily turned, heart racing. The figure on the other side of the glass wasn't Logan, but Claire, her assistant. She was early for the morning setup. Marcus leaned closer, his lips near her ear. "You tell anyone and I'll ruin you both. Choose carefully, Emily." She watched him leave, the door closing behind him with a soft click. But the tension lingered, heavier than before. Claire entered, cheerful but tired, oblivious to the tension still crackling in the air. "You okay, Emily? You look off." Emily forced a smile. "Just tired. Long night." But her mind was spinning. She had been careless. Too reckless. And now the walls were closing in tighter. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the gallery, but the warmth couldn't penetrate the icy knot in Emily's stomach. Her hands trembled as she arranged the new art pieces, the memory of Marcus's threats replaying in her mind on a relentless loop. She felt watched even when she was alone. The door chimed again. This time it wasn't Marcus, it was Logan. Her husband stood in the doorway, wearing the same warm smile she had fallen for years ago. But something in his eyes felt different. Colder. Calculating. He set down a small box of pastries on the front desk, his gaze sweeping over the gallery before landing on her. "I thought you might need breakfast," he said, voice gentle. "You didn't come home last night?" Again. Her heart skipped, throat tightening. I stayed late working on the new exhibit. You know how it gets before a show." Logan nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. But when he pulled out his phone, dread curled in her stomach. "Marcus stopped by the house," he said, flipping the screen toward her. The image Marcus had shown her the night before was staring back at her. Only this time, it was in Logan's messages. Her breath caught. "Care to explain why he sent this? Along with a financial breakdown of your gallery's funding? Funding I didn't know came from him?" The words stung, each syllable a nail driving deeper into her chest. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. Logan's voice remained calm, but the tremor of betrayal cracked through. "Tell me, Emily. How long?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head. "It's not what it looks like. Marcus, he's trying to manipulate me." Is he? "Because it looks pretty straightforward from where I'm standing." His voice hardened. "You told me you stopped all contact with him months ago." "I did. But..." The door behind them opened with a loud chime. "Marcus." He sauntered in, unbothered, his eyes locked on Logan now. "Morning, Logan." "Emily." His voice dripped with forced politeness. "I was just checking on my investment. You know, making sure everything is secure." Logan's jaw tightened. "What the hell are you playing at, Marcus?" Marcus shrugged, sliding his hands into his pockets. "I'm just a businessman. Emily and I have a mutual understanding." Logan's face darkened. "Stay away from my wife. You think you can blackmail her? Threaten us?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice low and venomous. "You think you know everything, Logan? Because you don't. Emily didn't tell you the whole truth, did she?" Logan shot a look at Emily, searching her face for confirmation. She felt trapped, exposed under their stares. "I never slept with him, Logan," she whispered, voice shaking. "But I let him get too close. I took his money because I was desperate. For the gallery. For us." Logan's face twisted with disbelief, hurt radiating from his eyes. You lied to me. Again. The tension was suffocating. Marcus smirked, voice dropping lower. You know, Logan, sometimes betrayal isn't about the act. It's about the secrecy. The lies. Emily's fists clenched. Get out, Marcus. He tilted his head as if considering it, then finally turned for the door. But before leaving he added with a final, sharp jab, remember, Emily? Lies have a way of catching up. And I'm not done yet. The door slammed shut. Silence. Logan stared at her, his face a storm of emotions. Her anger. Was he right? About the lies? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was scared. I was trying to protect us. He shook his head, backing away. You didn't protect us. You shattered us. And just like that, the foundation of their marriage cracked wide open. The days that followed felt like a slow unraveling of everything Emily had once trusted. Logan had moved out of their bedroom, choosing the guest room instead. The silence between them was heavier than any argument they had ever had. At the gallery, foot traffic dwindled. Rumors whispered through the artistic circles, suggestions of scandal, of an affair with Marcus that Emily couldn't shake, no matter how fiercely she denied them. Suppliers hesitated to fulfill orders. The tension was everywhere, seeping into every corner of her life. Marcus, true to his word, wasn't done. Late one evening, as Emily closed the gallery alone, her phone buzzed with a message. Let's not make this any messier than it already is. Meet me. Tonight. Or I tell Logan everything you're still hiding. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. What was left for him to expose? But the fear of losing Logan completely, of her entire world crumbling, pushed her to reply. Where? The dimly lit bar Marcus had chosen reeked of whiskey and desperation. He was already seated when she arrived, leaning back in his chair, watching her approach with that same smug confidence. Emily, he greeted, gesturing to the seat across from him. She didn't sit. What do you want, Marcus? Haven't you done enough? He chuckled, sipping his drink. Done enough? Come on. I haven't even started. You owe me. I paid you back. Every cent. Money was never the point, he said, voice dropping. You didn't just borrow cash, Emily. You borrowed power. Influence. I made you relevant again. I made your gallery successful when it was on life support. Her stomach twisted. She had been desperate back then, barely keeping the gallery alive after months of financial strain. But she never realized the strings attached. Marcus leaned closer. And now, I want more. I want you to convince Logan to sign over those investment shares in the gallery. Or I'll show him what you've been keeping from him. Emily stiffened. I've told him everything. Marcus's lips curled into a sinister smile. Have you? What about the deal with that artist you forged? Or the extra 10% you siphoned to cover last year's debt? Her face paled. Yet everything. You wouldn't dare. Marcus pulled out his phone, tapping the screen. A file popped up, scanned documents, emails, even altered invoices. Try me. That night, Emily returned home to find Logan sitting at the kitchen counter, a glass of scotch in hand, untouched. He didn't look up when she entered, but she felt the weight of his silence. Logan, we need to talk. Finally, he met her gaze, the hurt still raw in his eyes. Do we? Or do you have more lies to share? Tears stung her eyes. I was trying to protect us. Marcus, he's blackmailing me. He has files, Logan. I never wanted it to go this far. He set the glass down sharply. Protect us? You didn't protect anything, Emily. You lied. Repeatedly. She took a step closer. I didn't sleep with him. I never crossed that line. Logan's voice was a whisper, broken. You didn't have to. The trust is already gone. The cost of her choices was now impossible to ignore. The rain pounded hard against the windows as Emily stood in the center of the gallery, staring at the rows of artwork that once felt like her greatest achievement but now seemed to mock her. The shadows stretched longer than usual, mirroring the weight pressing on her chest. Marcus's threats echoed in her mind. The forged deal, the financial cover-ups, Logan knew now, and his silence cut deeper than any confrontation. But tonight she wouldn't let Marcus win. Not again. The bell above the gallery door chimed. Marcus entered, his presence as oppressive as ever. Dressed sharply, his smirk was already in place, as if he'd anticipated her surrender. I knew you'd come to your senses, he said, voice smooth but laced with venom. Emily squared her shoulders. I didn't ask you here to bargain, Marcus. I'm done being your puppet. He arched a brow, pulling out his phone. Are you? Because I'm one click away from making sure every detail of your dirty little secrets is public knowledge. Your marriage? Your gallery? It'll all burn, Emily. She swallowed hard but refused to break. I called Logan. He's on his way here. Whatever you have to say it to both of us. Marcus's smirk faltered for the briefest moment before he recovered. You're bluffing. The door opened. Logan entered, face stone cold, eyes dark with unresolved pain. He paused just inside, taking in the tension that filled the space. Go on, Marcus, Emily said, voice trembling but steady. Tell him. Marcus sneered. You think you're clever, Em? Fine. Logan, your wife forged a deal last year, pocketed extra commission to cover personal debts. She's a fraud. A liar. And all this, he gestured around the gallery, built on deception. Logan didn't flinch. He simply stared at Marcus, then turned to Emily. Is it true? Tears welled in her eyes. Yes. But it wasn't for me, Logan. I was trying to keep the gallery afloat. For us. I made a terrible mistake. But I never betrayed you with him. Not the way he wants you to believe. Marcus laughed coldly. Touching. But none of that changes the evidence I have. Emily's hand trembled as she pulled her phone from her coat. And I have evidence too, Marcus. She pressed play on a voice recording, his voice crystal clear. I don't care how much you paid back. You owe me. Get Logan's shares or I'll ruin both of you. His face paled. You. I recorded our last meeting. The threats, the blackmail, all of it. It ends tonight. Logan took a step closer, towering over Marcus. His voice was dangerously low. You're finished here. If you so much as contact my wife again, I'll press charges for extortion. Leave. Now. Marcus's lips parted, then twisted into a furious scowl. But he saw the determination in both their eyes and knew he had lost. Without another word, he turned on his heel and stormed out into the rain. Silence lingered between Emily and Logan. Finally he spoke, softer now. You should have told me the truth, Em. I could have helped. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was scared of losing everything. Losing you? Logan's face softened, but the hurt was still there. We're not done. Not yet. But it's going to take time to rebuild what we had. Emily nodded, voice breaking. I'll do whatever it takes. As the truth emerged, there was no turning back. The storm had passed by the time Emily and Logan stood outside the gallery, the air cool and fresh after the downpour. The city seemed quieter now, the clatter of life muffled in the aftermath. They hadn't said much since Marcus had left, the heavy silence between them carrying 1,000 unspoken words. Emily's gaze drifted over the wet streets, the reflections of streetlights dancing on the pavement. There was a sharp sting in her chest, like the wound had been opened again, but the pain felt different now, less raw, more like an aching clarity. She had never meant for things to spiral this far. Every decision she had made, every misstep, had been out of fear. Fear of losing the gallery, fear of losing Logan, fear of being exposed as the fraud Marcus had painted her to be. In the quiet of the gallery, she had told herself it was for them, for their future. But the truth had never been simple, and now the weight of it was suffocating. Logan stood beside her, his eyes scanning the horizon. He hadn't offered her comfort. He hadn't even tried to sugarcoat the situation. And though his words had been soft, there was an underlying sadness in his voice that cut deeper than any anger could have. Do you hate me? Emily whispered, her voice cracking with the fragility of the moment. Logan's gaze shifted to her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he exhaled slowly as if trying to carry the burden of it all. I don't hate you, Em. But I don't know what to think anymore. She nodded, understanding the distance that had settled between them. There were no quick fixes, no easy words to make it better. The truth had been laid bare, and it had torn through the fabric of their lives. They were broken in ways they hadn't been before, each piece of their trust shattered. It wasn't just about the money or the lies. It was about the things they hadn't said to each other, the things they'd kept buried beneath the surface. I should have trusted you, she said softly. I should have told you everything even when I was scared. Logan stayed silent for a long while, then reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was tentative, unsure. You should have, he said quietly. But you didn't. And now here we are. The truth was a bitter pill, but it was one they'd both had to swallow. They weren't out of the woods yet. The consequences of their actions loomed ahead, but at least now they had the chance to face them. Together or apart, that remained to be seen. "I'll fight for us," Emily said, her voice firm with resolve. "I'll fix this. I don't care how long it takes, I'm not giving up." Logan's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You always did have a stubborn streak," he said, his tone softening. The world seemed to hold its breath as they stood there, the weight of their past and the uncertainty of their future hanging between them. Emily knew that nothing would be the same. The trust they had once shared had been fractured, and some cracks would never be healed. But there was a small spark inside her, an ember of hope if nothing else. As the first few stars began to peek through the dark sky, Emily looked up. "What now?" Logan squeezed her hand. "Now we move forward. One step at a time." The weight of their choices lingered in the air, but Emily felt a shift. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like there was a chance to make things right. As silence fell, the echoes of their choices lingered in the air. But the journey wasn't over, not yet. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Or not. The story was far from finished. And with that, Emily realized that no matter the outcome, she had already changed. This is how the tale of their choices would ripple out into the world, and how their lives would intertwine for better or worse. The lingering question remained, could they find their way back to each other, or was this the end? The winds of fate were already turning, leaving the answers hidden in the distance, waiting to be discovered. But that, as always, was another story. The past has a way of creeping back even when buried deep. For Emily, it wasn't the grand gestures or the moments of betrayal that haunted her. It was the quieter, more subtle things, the decisions made in fear and silence that weighed heaviest. As she stood with Logan in the shadow of the gallery, the distant rumble of thunder seemed to echo in her mind. Memories she thought she had left behind began to surface. She tried to push them away, but the pain in her chest only deepened with each passing second, as if the storm inside her had never fully passed. Her eyes flicked to the city lights in the distance, but instead of the modern skyline, the scene before her morphed into something from years ago. The air felt different, warmer. The street outside was not lined with galleries but dingy, empty storefronts. She was younger then, only in her early 20s, but the hunger for success already gnawed at her. It wasn't just about money, it was about proving herself. She had always lived in the shadow of her father's reputation. Marcus had often mentioned the family business, boasting about how much they had achieved, but Emily had always felt like an afterthought in the grand scheme of things. Her father had never given her the approval she craved, and instead, she'd built a facade to cover her insecurities. That night had started like any other, full of hope and anticipation. She had been working late in a cramped office, sorting through stacks of paperwork, when she received a call from Marcus. He had been a fixture in her life for years, her father's business partner, the man who'd always made her feel like an outsider. But that night, his voice had been different. "I've got a proposition for you, Emily," Marcus had said, his tone smooth like always. "You're good with people. I need someone who can navigate the world your father can't, someone he won't suspect." Her heart had raced. She knew what he was asking. She had always known there was a darker side to the family business, but she had pushed those thoughts away, focusing only on the art gallery that she had dreamed of building. But now, she was standing at a crossroads. The weight of everything, the failure, the lies, the desire to prove herself, pushed her to make a choice she would come to regret. Marcus had played her. Not with grand promises, but with whispers of secrets, of alliances that would lift her above her father's shadow. He made her feel powerful, important, something she'd always craved. And that night, she made a deal with him. She would help him run interference, keep things hidden from her father, and in return she would be granted access to the top. As she walked through the same city streets that night, Marcus had been waiting at the corner, his familiar, sharp eyes piercing through the dark. "I knew I could count on you," he'd said, a smile twisting his lips. But there was no warmth in it. There never had been. "What do you need me to do?" she had asked, trying to steady her shaking hands. Marcus had leaned in, close enough for her to smell his cologne, the same one that lingered in her mind now years later. "There's a deal that's been messy. You can smooth it over for me. All I need is a little push. A signature. Nothing you can't handle." His eyes had darkened as he said those words. "I trust you, Emily. You're just like your father." And those words had sealed her fate. Her hand had hovered over the papers he presented, a simple signature that would turn the wheels of a larger conspiracy. The next morning, everything had spiraled. She hadn't known how deep the mess truly was until it was too late, until she realized that the deal Marcus had asked her to help broker was more than just financial, it was illegal. The art she had been so eager to bring into her gallery was being funneled through back channels, sold on the black market. The very thing that had meant to raise her up had instead trapped her in a world of secrets and lies. She had tried to get out. She had even confronted Marcus, demanding to be free of it all. But he just laughed it off the same way he always did. "You made your choice, Emily. There's no turning back now." But she'd been scared of what her father might do if he found out, scared of the consequences, and above all, scared of losing everything. So she kept quiet. She kept playing the game. She continued to hide the truth, burying it deeper and deeper as the years went by, until it had become nothing more than a memory, a shadow she could no longer escape. Now, standing beside Logan in the present, everything she had kept hidden felt like it was choking her. Every lie, every secret, every misstep had led her here, to this broken, fragile moment. The realization hit her hard. She had never wanted to hurt anyone. But in trying to protect herself, she had dragged others into her web of lies. She had wanted to shield Logan from the truth, to keep him safe from the wreckage that was her past. But the truth always came out, didn't it? She turned to him now, feeling the weight of the past in her bones. "Logan, there's something I never told you. Something I should have said a long time ago." His brow furrowed, his jaw tightening. "Emily, what are you talking about?" She swallowed hard, her chest tight. "Marcus didn't just steal from us. He made me part of something illegal. I didn't want to be, but I was too scared to get out." Logan's expression faltered, a mix of disbelief and hurt flashing across his face. "What do you mean, illegal?" She nodded slowly, the confession burning in her throat. "I helped him cover up a deal. It wasn't just business, it was a crime. And I didn't know how to fix it." The air between them grew thick with tension as Logan processed her words. The realization of what she had just revealed, what it meant for them, for everything they'd built, hung like a sword over them. The silence was deafening. "I don't even know who you are anymore, Emily," Logan whispered, his voice shaking. "How could you keep this from me?" She couldn't answer him, not yet. All she could do was face the storm within her, and the storm that was now raging between them. The truth was out, and there was no turning back now. Help can come from the most unlikely places, or so it seemed. The weight of Emily's confession hung in the air like a suffocating fog. Logan's eyes burned with a mixture of disbelief and anger. He had always seen Emily as the woman he wanted to build a future with, but now she seemed like a stranger, someone who had kept dark secrets just out of his reach. The silence stretched between them, thick and painful. "I need some air," Logan muttered, his voice thick with emotion. He didn't wait for her response before turning and walking toward the door of the gallery. The cool night air greeted him like a slap to the face, but it did nothing to clear his head. His thoughts were racing, circling back to Marcus, to the lies, to the life he thought they had built together. Emily's footsteps followed, hesitant but firm. She reached out for him, but Logan pulled away before she could touch his arm. "Logan, please, I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want to drag you into this mess. I don't know what to believe anymore, Emily. How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been playing this game, hiding things from me? What kind of person are you?" The bitterness in his voice stung her deeper than she had ever imagined possible. She had never meant for things to get this far out of control. But her mistakes, her fears, had slowly chipped away at the trust they'd built. She had never anticipated this reaction, this distance between them. And then, just as the tension seemed ready to crack under the pressure, a sharp voice cut through the night. "You've been keeping secrets, haven't you?" Logan and Emily turned in unison to see a figure emerging from the shadows, a man they hadn't expected. He stepped into the light, his expression cold but knowing, familiar but unsettling. It was Jake, Marcus's right-hand man. A man who had always lurked just outside the core of Emily's life, his sharp eyes always watching, waiting. She had never thought much of him until now. "What do you want, Jake?" Emily asked, her voice stiff. Her pulse quickened. This wasn't good. Jake grinned, a sly, knowing grin that made her skin crawl. I came to offer a solution, he said, eyes flicking to Logan, who stood stiff, watching every movement. Solution? Logan repeated. What solution? What the hell are you doing here? Nothing you need to worry about, Logan, Jake replied, his gaze locking onto Emily. You see, Emily, we both know you've made a mess of things. But we also know you're in over your head. You've played the game for too long. It's time for a little intervention. Emily's stomach churned. She didn't trust Jake, and she had no intention of getting involved in whatever he was suggesting. But the way he stood there, so calm, so assured, sent a chill down her spine. I'm done with you, Jake. And I'm done with Marcus, Emily said firmly, her voice low but resolute. Jake tilted his head, a flicker of amusement flashing in his eyes. That's where you're wrong. You think you can just walk away from this mess? Think again. He paused, letting the tension build. I'm offering you a way out, but only if you do something for me. Logan's suspicion deepened, and he stepped forward, his jaw tight. What kind of out are you talking about? Jake's grin widened. An out that could change everything. But first, we need to make sure Marcus doesn't have any more leverage on you. If we cut him out, all your secrets get buried. You walk away from this. You get everything back. Clean slate? Emily's mind raced. The offer seemed almost too good to be true, but her gut told her there was a cost, one she wouldn't be willing to pay. Still, she had never been this cornered. Every option seemed like it would lead to more complications, more consequences. I don't want your help, Jake. I'm not doing anything for you or Marcus, Emily said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. Jake's eyes darkened. You've got no choice. You think you're the only one with secrets, Emily? You don't know what Marcus has on you, do you? He's just waiting for the right moment to play his hand. I can help you, but you'll have to make a choice. Logan's gaze shifted between the two of them. There was something off about the way Jake was speaking, like he was setting them up for something far worse than just cutting ties with Marcus. Why would you help us? Logan asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. You're with Marcus. You have no reason to offer us anything. Jake's smirk faltered for just a moment, a crack in his confident facade. Then he leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I have my own reasons, Logan. Let's just say I'm not too fond of Marcus either. But I'm not doing this out of charity. You'll owe me, Emily. Big time. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She didn't trust Jake, not for a second, but she also knew that the walls were closing in on her fast. It felt like every move she made was a step deeper into a pit she might never crawl out of. What do you want me to do? Emily asked, her voice a mixture of resignation and wariness. Jake's lips curled into a smile. It's simple. You get Marcus to trust you again. You feed him just enough to keep him from going after you, after your family. But at the same time, you position yourself as someone who can be of use to him. You play the game, but you make sure he never wins. Emily felt a knot form in her stomach. The plan sounded impossible. But she could see Logan's eyes, still filled with doubt but also curiosity. He didn't trust Jake, but he wasn't ready to turn his back on Emily completely. I don't know if I can do this, Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake took a step back, sizing her up. You can't walk away now. There's no going back. But I can help you navigate the mess you're in, on one condition. What condition? Emily asked, already fearing the answer. Jake's smile was the only answer she needed. You let me in. You let me take the lead on this, and we'll make sure Marcus never sees you coming. Emily stood still, her heart pounding. This wasn't the ally she had hoped for, and yet, somehow, it was the ally she needed. The question was whether it was worth the price she might have to pay. Some choices leave scars no matter which path you take. Emily couldn't sleep. The night seemed endless, its silence more suffocating than any noise. Her thoughts raced, drowning her in waves of guilt and regret. The shadows from the evening still clung to her like a second skin, and her heart hammered against her chest, every beat a reminder of the lies she'd told, the promises she'd broken. Everything she had worked so hard to build, everything she had fought for, was now hanging by the thinnest thread. Logan's anger had been raw, uncontainable. She could still hear the sting of his words, the way his voice had cracked when he confronted her, accusing her of betrayal. Every word had cut deep, each one a reminder of how far they had fallen apart. She'd always prided herself on being able to control her life, to steer her fate, but now, all of that control had slipped through her fingers like sand. She hadn't meant for any of this to happen. She had never imagined it would get so out of hand. Her relationship with Logan had once felt like a sanctuary, a place of refuge. Now it was shattered. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the disappointment in his face, the hurt in his eyes. She had promised him a future, their future. But now, it was a distant dream, fading more with each passing minute. Emily paced the length of the living room, her fingers trembling as they brushed over the edge of the coffee table. Her thoughts kept circling back to Jake's offer, an offer that seemed like both a lifeline and a trap. Could she trust him? Could she trust anyone anymore? And more importantly, did she even have a choice? Jake wasn't the type to offer help out of kindness. He was playing a dangerous game just like everyone else. But for Emily it had come down to this. She could either accept his offer and find a way to cut Marcus out of her life for good, or risk losing everything, the life she had worked for, the future she dreamed of. There was no middle ground, no safe option. Logan's voice echoed in her mind, his words punctuating her every thought. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore," he had said. The pain in his voice had been almost unbearable. The truth was she didn't blame him. She had betrayed his trust in ways she couldn't even begin to explain. She had let him down, and the weight of that guilt was crushing her. Her phone buzzed suddenly in her pocket, snapping her from her spiraling thoughts. She glanced at the screen. Logan's name flashed in front of her, and her stomach twisted. For a moment she hesitated. Part of her wanted to ignore the call, to hide from the reality of what she had done. But another part of her, the part that still loved him, couldn't do that. She couldn't run anymore. She answered the phone with a shaky breath. "Logan," she whispered, trying to steady her voice. "Emily," his voice was tight, strained. "We need to talk." Her heart sank, the words feeling like a blow to the chest. "I know," she replied softly, her throat tightening. "I'm sorry. I never wanted any of this to happen." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and Emily could almost hear the weight of his thoughts. She could feel him battling with himself, torn between anger and something else, something softer, more vulnerable. Finally he spoke again, his voice colder than before. "I don't know if I can do this, Emily. I don't know if I can trust you anymore. But I don't want to just walk away without understanding why this happened." His words hit her like a slap, the sting sharp and unforgiving. She could hear the hurt in his voice, the way it cracked under the strain. Logan had always been the steady one between them, the one who had held their relationship together when things got tough. Now it was as if the ground beneath them had crumbled away, and she was left standing alone, unsure of what to do next. "Logan," she said softly, her voice faltering. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." The words felt hollow, as if they were too little, too late. She wished she could take everything back, erase the lies, the secrets, the mistakes. But there was no going back. The damage had been done, and now all she could do was face the consequences. "I don't know what to believe anymore," Logan replied, his voice heavy with the weight of his pain. "But I need some time. I need some space." And with that, the line went silent. Emily stood there, holding the phone in her trembling hand, feeling the distance between them grow with every second that ticked by. She didn't know if they could come back from this, if they could ever rebuild what had been broken. The trust they had built together felt so fragile now, like glass shattering under the slightest pressure. She sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face as she fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. What had she done? The question repeated in her mind over and over, each time sharper than the last. She had been playing this dangerous game, trying to outmaneuver everyone around her. But now it felt like she was the one who had been outsmarted. The walls were closing in and there was no way out. Jake's words echoed in her mind once again, "There's no going back now." Was that true? Could she really walk away from Marcus? Could she let go of everything she had known and start fresh, or would the cost be too great? She had no illusions about what taking Jake's help meant. It would tie her to him, to his world, forever. There was no escaping that. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that every path forward was fraught with consequences. If she didn't take Jake's offer, she would lose everything. Logan, her reputation, her future. But if she accepted, what kind of person would she become? How much of herself was she willing to sacrifice to escape this web of lies and deceit? Emily rubbed her temples, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She was torn between two worlds, The one she had built with Logan and the one she had tried so desperately to leave behind. The reality of the situation was that she couldn't have both. One path would lead her to a future of redemption, of rebuilding what she had lost. The other would drag her further into the darkness, leaving her with nothing but empty promises and broken dreams. The truth was she didn't know what to do anymore. Her conscience gnawed at her, pulling her in two different directions. She wanted to walk away, to leave behind the dangerous world she had found herself in. But she couldn't escape the fear that by doing so she would lose everything that mattered. Logan, the life they had planned, the future they had dreamed of. For the first time in a long time, Emily didn't have an answer. The choices ahead of her were impossible, the consequences too great. She sank deeper into the couch, her body exhausted, her heart heavy with the weight of her decisions. Some choices leave scars no matter which path you take. The words echoed in her mind, their truth undeniable. But which path would she take? Would she walk away from everything she had known, or would she stay, and risk losing it all? The silence of the night was deafening. And for the first time, Emily felt completely and utterly alone.